When I was young, I had this sort of split desire to be a farmer and be in the natural world, but also to be inside of books. I had parents who were very practical minded and said, you got to get a job someday and you got to find a way to support your family and do those kinds of things if you're going to have one. And so the study of literature and the study of growing things were sort of woven together throughout my entire life. When I got to grad school, that's when I really got interested in the works of Ernest Hemingway. He was a convert, and well, I was interested in that because I thought Hemingway's writing was really cool, and I thought, well, how could somebody who's really cool also be really Catholic? And how do you have these characters who are able to drink wine but yet also go to Mass, or go to a bullfight but also believe in God and these kinds of things? Because I didn't have any sense of what my faith was in any way whatsoever. I think I had gone to Mass maybe 10 times my entire life by the time I was in my 20s. I was 23 at the time, and I decided to go live in Europe and take a break from graduate school. So I went to France and Spain, and I walked part of the Camino de Santiago de Compostela because Hemingway had done that. But in doing the pilgrimage to Santiago, it became my pilgrimage, and it was no longer about Hemingway. And when I got to Santiago on the Feast of St. James, there was just a profound moment of conversion in the church. It was as if God just kind of like put his hand on me. It was so obvious that my life had to be Catholic in every way. So I can say that Hemingway led me there, but God was the one who ushered me in. I finished grad school. I get a job. It was a Catholic college. I was an associate professor of English. I taught things like agrarian literature, like earth literature and farming and things like that. It was a great opportunity, but I felt like there should be something more. The school that I was working at, there just was nothing there that really said Christ is the center of this education at this college. I remember I had just created a course called Literature and Christianity. I felt like there should be something more, that I wanted the poetry class to go out and plant garlic at the same time as we were reading Dante. Well, the more that I talked about a Catholic curriculum, the more that I think all my administrators got really kind of nervous, and they took an opportunity to make faculty cuts, so I knew I was going to lose my job. But God had prepared us for something different, to start our own farm. Right at the moment when we weren't quite sure what was happening in life, a good friend of ours said, you should pray this Divine Mercy Chaplet novena. We had never said a Divine Mercy Chaplet in our lives. We didn't even know what the devotion was. So we're like, we're going to do this novena because you know what? We need to grow in holiness. We need to do more devotions. We know that I'm going to lose my job, and we're trying to find a farm, and nothing is happening. So we prayed the novena, and then on Divine Mercy Sunday, the priest talked about how Divine Mercy is feeding the poor. And I said, wait a minute, we want to start a farm to feed the poor. Where did that come from? So I took out my little notebook in the middle of Mass. I didn't look at my wife. She's sitting over there. I wrote down on the notebook, Divine Mercy Farm. Mass ends. My wife turns and looks at me. She didn't know I wrote that down, and she says, Divine Mercy Farm. So I go to a guy who had handed me this pamphlet for Divine Mercy Chaplet Novena, Jerry Bauman, and I said, I think that my wife and I are called to start a farm to feed the poor called Divine Mercy Farm. Matt, we got to talk. So we talked, and we talked a lot. So he contacted a friend of his who started a ministry 30-odd years ago called My Jesus Mercy Ministries. So Jerry said, Matt, you got to go up there and talk to Joe Grady. He's got a lot of land up there. I know you're looking for this farm. So in the midst of all this call, my wife and I felt that we didn't just necessarily want to feed the materially destitute. We wanted to feed the religious, the spiritual poor, because we saw that in our desire for our Lord through adoration, we were the most poor that we could ever be. And in that, it sort of struck a chord with us that the religious orders, especially the cloistered orders who are praying for the salvation of all of us, they're the ones who we need to focus on. So one day in May, I drive up to meet Joe Grady. His land is called the City of God on Mary's land. Mary owns the whole thing. You could just tell he loves Jesus so much. He's saying, you're welcome to farm up here. And I said, that sounds nice, but I live an hour and a half away. Farmers has to kind of be where he lives. And I pointed to a house that was just next door. And I said, well, what about that house? And he said, well, nobody's living in that house. The brother and the sister own it. So he gave him a call, and a couple of weeks went by, and they said, no, we're not really interested in selling it. We finally talked to the brother and sister. They were still getting the house out of probate. It was a whole big mess. The house had been abandoned for years. When my wife and I drove up the driveway, I could just tell she got like that thing where she said, "Don't talk." It was like the house of our dreams. Now, I had a job at the time, so I was still able to qualify for a mortgage. I don't think I've ever done so many devotions in my life. We just knew we needed to give everything to the Lord for this. It gets down to the wire. It's December 2021. My job is ending December 31st, 2021. I have 1 month to acquire this house, and I qualify for a mortgage still. We're ready to sign the papers, and the people who own the house hesitated for a few weeks. Then it was Christmas. It was impossible now to get a mortgage, to have everything go through in a week. We lost 2 people who were very close to us that Christmas. It was a very sad time. But for some reason, we just knew that we had to completely give it to God. The new year comes. I am officially released. We look at each other. We don't know what to do. But it's the 12 days of Christmas, so we're going to celebrate the birth of our Lord. And then on the Feast of the Epiphany, Joe Grady calls me and says, "Hey, Matt, somebody's going to buy the house for you, and it's going to be Divine Mercy Farm." It was 9 months from Divine Mercy Sunday to almost exactly to the day. Getting here was for God's glory. Now having to turn an abandoned property into a farm that actually feeds people is another cross that we have to carry to glorify God. But I get to be in the most beautiful place I could ever dream of every day of my life. The moment of my first conversion in Santiago de Compostela, all the way up to today, it is a continual line of trying to be more in unity with our Lord and to love Him and to see how much He loves me and how He loves all of us. I just want to give my son a vision of what it is to live a faithful life and a virtuous life and to really love Jesus. I want him to see that every single thing we do is with our Lord at the center of it. We can trust Him and we can give Him everything.